All right, so I'm actually going to try this again. I have been working on these videos. It's been really hard without really good technology to get one of these going. I started with a tripod, and the tripod, my phone must weigh too much. It kept like tipping over, and um, this has been really difficult. I really wish we were back in the classroom, but I'm going to start with kind of going over just a few examples to kind of get started. What we're going to be working on this week is solving equations, and I'm holding my phone with my left hand and writing with my right and trying to erase as well here because I have a really small board, but solving equations using square roots. And I wish I could have found like a really nice video about this online, but the truth is it just really wasn't, everything I found online wasn't exactly what I was looking for. So I'm like, okay, we're gonna have to create our own video. And like I said, my technology is not as good as what you're gonna find on like YouTube and things like that. But bear with me. So before we get started, like we need to kind of review like what is a square root. So if you have this symbol right here, a lot of people, it's a radical symbol. It's a lot of people want to, when they first start working with square roots, they think it looks like a crazy looking division sign. It's not, it's a square root. And when you're trying to find a square root of a number, let's start with one easy, like 25. You're trying to think, what number could I multiply by itself 2 times to get 25? Or, like what times what equals 25? And it has to be the same number in here. Well, that would be 5. Because 5 times 5 equals 25. And so we're pretty good with square roots. But what I want you guys to kind of start thinking about now is sometimes in front of square roots, they'll have what's called this like plus and minus sign in front of it. And that's telling you can have a positive answer and a negative answer. And like, why is that? Well, we know 5 times 5 is 25, so the square root of 25 could be 5. But what about negative 5 times negative 5? Well, negative times a negative is a positive, so negative 5 times negative 5 is also 25. So you can have 2 answers here, a positive and a negative. And that goes with any square root. So the square root of 144. So you're thinking, what number can I multiply by itself to come up with 144? If you can't figure it out, you can use your calculator. But the square root of 144, it could be 12, because 12 squared, or 12 to the second power, is 144. But it also could be negative 12, because negative 12 times negative 12 is 144. So that's just a little bit of a review on what square roots are. A lot of people divide by 2. So they would do like the square root of 4 and they would divide by 2. Well, the square root of 4, if you divide by 2, you'll get lucky and still get the same answer. But you have to remember it's not dividing by 2, it's thinking what number do you multiply by itself to get to this answer underneath the radical sign. Let's just do one more. Square root of 81. So what number could I multiply by itself to get to 81? Well, it could be 9 or negative 9. So I could have 2 answers, a plus or a minus, okay? Because a negative times a negative is also a positive. So moving on from this, I want to try to do this. I'm really struggling with my current setup here. Maybe I'll find something easier. I'm going to have to set my phone down. Sorry. I was trying to just like pause the recordings and then I was losing what I was working on. So let's try to get back in focus. There we go. Let's talk about equations. So it's been a while because we've been working on like geometry and stuff. It's been a while since we looked at equations. Let's look at some easy equations. All right, so here I just have a few examples. These are called one-step equations. Well, the equations we're actually going to be working on this week are also going to be one-step equations, the equations using square roots. So I just want to go back and review some of the easier one-step equations you guys have been working on. X plus 5 equals 12. This is a one-step equation because I only have to do one thing to solve for x. So remember, our whole purpose of solving an equation is we're trying to figure out what our variable is. And all of these problems, our variables just happen to be x. That is a commonly used variable, but you could have any variable. It doesn't have to be x, but no matter what the variable is, the purpose is the same. You're going to isolate the variable, which means get the variable by itself. So you have to get rid of the plus 5. How you get rid of that plus 5 is you do the opposite. The opposite of addition is subtraction. So to cancel this out, instead of adding 5, I subtract 5. And I do that from both sides. 12 minus 5 is 7. So x is equal to 7. I like to circle my answers. If I plug a 7 back in here, 7 plus 5 is, in fact, 12. So you want to make sure your answer, if you plug it back in for your variable, it satisfies the equation, it makes the equation true. And 7 plus 5 is 12, so that's true. This works. Over here, x minus 4 equals 6. I have a minus, and the opposite of subtraction is addition. So I can add 4 to both sides. It's going to cancel that out. 6 plus 4 is 10. Can I plug 10 into that equation and make it work? 10 minus 4 is 6. It works. I'm going to circle my answer. Right here, this is, a lot of people read it as 3x. I kind of do that too, 3x. But it's not just 3x. That means it's 3 times x. 3 is being multiplied by x. When they're right up next to each other like that, it's multiplication. And the opposite of multiplication is division. And a fraction is just division. So I write it, it looks like a fraction, but I'm just dividing. 3 divided by 3 is 1. 27 divided by 3 is 9. Does it work? 3 times 9 equals 27. Yes, that works. So just a quick review on equations. We do the inverse operations to isolate our variables. David's going to be so mad at me because I can't get all these little marks erased when I am working with one hand here because I got to hold my phone with the other. All right, kind of messy, but it works. So let's look at some of these square root equations. Like, I don't know, x squared is equal to 49. And let's do x squared is equal to 100. Well, if I have to solve an equation by doing like the inverse or the opposite operations, I have to think, what is the opposite of taking a number to its second power? That would be a square root. The opposite of squaring a number, this is x squared, so the opposite of squaring a number is finding its square root. And this looks a little bit crazy, but I'm just showing you I'm isolating my variable. The x squared, if I take the square root of that, it just becomes x. It just kind of cancels that out. But if I take the square root over here, we know in algebra, if you do something to one side of the equation, you have to do it to the other. Now I have to find the square root of 49. I want you to be careful with this. There's a reason why I talked to you about the positive and the negative square root. Because x, you're probably thinking it's 7. And you're right. X could be 7. Or it could also be negative 7, right? Because a negative 7 squared is also positive 49. Just like 7 squared is also 49. 7 times 7 is 49. Negative 7 times negative 7 is 49. So on these equations, you're going to have 2 answers. All right? You're going to have a positive and a negative. Don't forget that. You're going to have 2 answers. On your IXL, your assignment's going to be on IXL. you're going to have 2 boxes, and that will help you kind of remember that you need 2 answers, positive and a negative. So let's look at this first one. Well, how would I get my variable by itself? X squared equals 10. Take the square root of both sides. That gets x by itself. And the square root of 100 is 10 or 10 squared. Or sorry, negative 10. So 10 or negative 10. I need a positive and a negative. So sometimes on these equations, they might write it like x squared equals the square root of 30, or sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. Now I'm making all kinds of mistakes. I do this like in class too. I make mistakes, then, I just make sure the kids notice I make a mistake. Not really. It's just total accident. X squared equals 36. So I could plug in 6 here or negative 6. Sometimes you'll see this wrote like this, plus or minus 6. All right, instead of writing 6 or negative 6, sometimes in algebra textbooks and other computer applications, you might just see it wrote plus and minus 6. That's just showing you it could be positive or negative 6. On your IXL, they're going to have you do it like this. You're going to have 2 boxes, and you're going to plug in the plus and minus. So I'm actually going to see if I can pull up the IXL. So I'm working on the same device as the kids use. So I'm going to sign in, and this is under IXL F19, solve equations using square roots. All right, so I have b squared equals 144. So what I would do to solve this equation is I would take the square root of both sides, and I have to think, what is the square root of 144? And you can see it gives you 2 boxes for the answer. So even if I forget, like say I'm thinking, oh, the square root of 144 is 12. And what if you don't know that? Like what if you're stuck on one? It's like, well, I don't know that off the top of my head. Pull up your calculator. Right now it's on scientific. Trying to think if you need the scientific mode on, or if you can just do it under standard. Yeah, so I just clicked up here and changed it to standard because you can do the square root under the standard version. So you type in 144, this right here is the square root button. And so it kind of says in parentheses there, the square root of 144 is 12. So what if you accidentally just type in 12 and you forget the negative? It's going to tell you incomplete answer. So it's not going to let you finish until you type in the positive or the negative, which is the kind of the nice thing about this. 64. All right, so if I take the square root of both sides, I'm going to get 8 and negative 8. And it shouldn't matter which one you type in first, the negative or the positive. And then you can see my score is up to 23. Of course, the kids always get mad because I can just jump up. Now I'm in the 90s. I'm already in the challenge zone. So as we go through, it looks like what happens is the problems don't necessarily get, I don't want to say it's more complicated. It's just something you might have to use a calculator for, unless you just know that the square root of 324 off the top of your head. The square root of 324 is 18. So it's not that it gets harder, it's just that the numbers get bigger, but you guys can use your calculator. So 18 or negative 18. So that's going to be your assignment this week, is to work on IXL F19. But not just that. I think this one is pretty easy myself. I just want to refresh our minds on perfect squares. So we're also going to do F15, square roots of perfect squares. And I would start there before you start F19. F15, it goes When I talk about perfect squares, you can find the square root of any number, but it's not always going to be a perfect square root. So what's like the difference between a perfect square and a non-perfect square? Well, the square root of 64, that's considered a perfect square because it's 8. And I'm just going to advise you on this one, you just need one answer. All right, so I'm just putting in positive 8. So it's kind of confusing. On one, you need 2. On the other one, you just need 1. But the square root of 64 is 8. It's a perfect square because 8 is not, it's a whole number. It's not a fraction or a decimal. So like the square root of 65, I can still find it, but it's not going to be perfect. It's going to be like a crazy long decimal. 65 square root, some crazy long decimal, that's not a perfect square. So as long as it comes out to like a whole number, then it is considered a perfect square. So this is, for a lot of you, it's going to be mental math. For those of you who like the mental math, Miles Kennett, Seth Weaver, you guys know who you are. You'll like this because you can do a lot of this in your head. The square root of 1, of course, is 1. And you can see it's putting my score up there pretty quickly, but you have to really have a good background knowledge of square roots. Second semester of Algebra 1, you'll do a lot with square roots, so just a really good thing to kind of go back and review. If you guys have any questions, let me know. All right, so just please be advised on F15, you need one answer. But if I go back to F19, when you solve equations, you need 2. And that is because your variable could be the positive or the negative answer. So F19. Solve equations using square roots. This is where you have 2 boxes, means you need 2 answers, positive and negative. All right, so hopefully, like lots of times, I mean, we're already up to 17.5 minutes here. I like to go through a lot of examples always. So if that is not enough, if you guys need more help, reach out to me and send me an email. But I hope this all goes okay. I hope this video works out well. If you guys need anything, just send me an email. Thank you.